Boom More Sports, House of Boom podcast, sports division. I'm your host, Eric Boom Salvery, in the building tonight. Exciting weekend just passed. A lot of bowl games. A lot of stuff went on this weekend. But, no drones, though. I think we're done with that for now. No aliens. I was kind of looking forward. They probably wait for 2025 for that to happen. But, it is what it is. Until then, we're just going to have to, just enjoy the new year. All that good stuff. But we're here. We're here. And one story that broke out, that was interesting, right off the heels of Michael Vick getting a job at Norfolk State. I got to make sure I say that right because I had people coming at me, people I know from Virginia saying it's not Norfolk. It's one word, Norfolk State. Just one word, got hired as an HBCU head coach. And a couple days later, literally, maybe I'm going to say a week later. See, Michael Vick, we had like rumors. Like I heard about it like weeks ago. I just wasn't bold enough to put it out there and be like, yo, this is happening. But, shout out to Off Script. Shout out to Jeff Lightly on YouTube, two YouTubers who were pushing those stories. And then out of the blue, what was that, the day after Christmas? I want to say the day after Christmas. I'm looking down at my phone. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? DeSean Jackson, former Cal Bear, former Eagles, former Raider, Ram, Redskin, all that good stuff. Guy could probably give you 1,000 yards in any year of his career. Special player, elite speed, had some interesting NFL moments, He's had some game breakers and some goofy stuff happen here or there. You know what I mean? But we love him all the same. Became the head coach of Delaware State University. Not too far, right up 95. A close job, I hope. Actually, I don't know how far the job is because one time I went to Delaware and I didn't realize Delaware had that much Delaware in Delaware. I was like, whoa, I didn't know the state was that long. So, then, I was like, dang, I got to drive home. It was for a wedding, I remember. I was like, I really didn't know because, it's usually that state when you go into D.C., Maryland, whatever, the DMV, you go through there and it's like 2 tolls and you're done. It's like, but not so much, that's just the top of Delaware. But anyways, DeSean Jackson, former NFL pro. I think he was one time All-Pro. A couple of Pro Bowls on his belt. Surprised us and took the job at Delaware State. Now, there have been some mixed reactions here and there. There have been a lot of people praising the move. HBCUs need a light. They need something beyond Coach Prime. You know what I mean? It seems like there's an NFL pipeline development to HBCUs where former players, decided they want to take on the job if the school will have them now. Now Michael Vick and DeSean Jackson were technically the third in line. We forgot about the snafu with Ed Reed, but he's passionate, and I'm hoping that he'll get a second chance at another HBCU job. Just one that he ain't have to pick up trash all over the place. Just to and all that good stuff. But anyway, shout out to Bethune-Cookman. But yeah, he's the head coach. Delaware State University. Now, again, I said there was some mixed reactions. I saw one reaction, a journalist, HBCU journalist. He said something about he likes the move for Delaware State, but he feels as if DeSean Jackson is just in it to hit a lick. Now, usually when somebody hits a lick, that means it's a come up. You know what I mean? Delaware State hasn't won many games over the last few years, hence why they're in the position to be down and looking at DeSean Jackson as a possibility. He is the head coach, but, just in the realm of possibility before he got the job. A lick is a come up, not come down too. And I didn't understand that take. But what I did do is, reach through the network. Your network is your net worth. And, reach out to some people, who I know, who know the vibe of, HBCUs. I'm the PWI guy. I could have went to HBCU though, but I chose to go to a PWI. But, somebody knows the HBCU life, and is from the great state of Delaware, which nobody knew was that long. So tonight I have with me Danielle. Scott is in the building. Oh, she's shy. Look at her.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
The first state, the Diamond State.
The first date, she's, the one thing I know about her is she's going to have her facts. We used to call her Bible Olympic. She knows what she knows, and she knows it very, very well. She's a very great researcher. Even before we started this episode, she was already doing some backlogging and making sure. She's like, all right. And I'm like, yo, you could bring that with you. She's like, nah, I'm good. Because then I get in the weeds with the research. It's over. But yeah, we in here tonight, man. How you feeling? First of all, before we even get to all that, how you feeling tonight? How's everything? How's life treating you?
I'm okay, but I am potty training, so we had with the holidays a little bit of regression I'm dealing with, but other than that, I can't complain.
How's the potty training? Sounds like a shitty job.
With kid number 2, it's a little easier, but at the same time, you just clean up a lot of pee and poop and repeating of messages and encouragement. And interestingly enough, sometimes I feel like my house is cleaner during potty training than not, because you're mopping up the pee and all of that good stuff.
So shout out to all the moms out there.
Shout out to all the toddler moms.
Shout out to all the toddler moms out there. You only get one, you know what I mean? And, I'm sure that it is an adventure of its own. But before we even get started on, this path of DeSean Jackson, tell us something interesting about Delaware that most people don't know, besides that it's bigger than I thought.
Delaware is the 8th blackest state in the country.
Really?
Yes. Oh gosh, of course the name is going to leave me. But there's Charles Blow recently wrote a book and talking about coalescing Black power and basically moving to certain states to coalesce that power. And so in that book, he highlights the fact that Delaware is the 8th blackest state.
Okay, that's something I did not know. So did you feel that growing up in Delaware?
I mean, my parents did a really good job of making sure that I had diverse experiences and that I had interactions with a lot of Black folks in the state of Delaware. But surprisingly, yes, I had a lot of Black folks around me, maybe not necessarily in my particular neighborhood, but when I went to school, in different activities, it wasn't really a case of I'm the only Black kid in the school, which is something you might hear certain people say. So, no, there's a lot more Black folks than people seem to understand. Okay.
So, growing up in Delaware, what was there ever an opportunity for you to be like, I might want to go to Del State? Because it seems like you had HBCU vibes always in you before you chose to go to Spellman.
So, for me, my parents were both educators. My dad is a prominent Delawarean, or was a prominent Delawarean, so they both are graduates of Delaware State University.
How about that?
So it wasn't something I looked to, but not because there was anything wrong with Delaware State. I had to leave the state because my dad worked in education. I had one boyfriend, and he went to a private school prior to coming to my high school. So, when your high school crush is basically your dad's like a father figure to me. So therefore, I can't even think of you that way. I jetted out of Delaware. But shout out to HBCUs. Shout out to Delaware State for sure.
And you chose to go where again?
I went to Spellman College.
All right. Tell us something interesting about Spellman College that people don't often know. I mean, you're just the person who knows these things. So
let's see, Spellman facts. I mean, here's one that a lot of Black people probably know, but just to throw it out there, a lot of the campus shots from A Different World is the campus of Spellman College. So one of my favorite moments from my freshman year is you're getting ready to go to class, you turn on the TV, and your freshman dorm is, the transition for any given scene in A Different World. So that was pretty cool.
So you were groomed, no diddy, to go to Spellman just from watching TV.
Yeah. Another one, though, a lot of Black folks may know this, but generations have passed, but Martin Luther King, he laid in state at Sisters Chapel, which is the main kind of big gathering place on campus. So I think those are my 2, random Spellman facts that people may not know.
That's what's up. I've recently been able to, congregate with some people from Spellman. The Toyota HBCU Classic between Morehouse and so 2 years in a row, we had Morehouse up here. But the cheerleaders were from Spellman.
Most. I think you get a couple of folks from Clark Atlanta University.
Okay.
Shout out to the AUC. But yes, most of the cheerleaders at Morehouse come from Spellman College.
Yeah, so just cool with the Morehouse cheer squad. They gave me a nice drop and all that good stuff. And anytime I go And I would say that, even though I almost went to Winston-Salem, I was right on the cusp of it, but I decided to stay home for other reasons. But I would say that when they come up here for that Toyota HBCU Classic, you really get the feel, and they do like the Battle of the Bands and all these things that are going on, and this is just all the pageantry that happens, but it's all happening. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm in it. And, you're standing next to the administrator, and this director, and this one's the president of the school. You're like, man, this is serious up here. But shout out to the HBCU pride and all that good stuff like that. And now you're familiar with Coach Prime. Came and he took over Jackson State, and from an outsider, even though you didn't go to JSU, what did you think about that from a perspective of somebody who's been in the culture and just lived it?
Yeah, I mean, I was excited when Coach Prime decided to go to JSU. But interestingly enough, I didn't think about the HBCUs per se when that move happened. I thought about things like the Rooney Rule and how this rule that was put in place to basically increase the number of black coaches really wasn't helping. And I feel like moves like what Coach Prime did was a way to say, okay, you're not going to let me get in here, even though I possibly could work at that level. Mm-hmm. So let me go back, right? Where can I get that angle? Where can I get that job? Where can I get that experience? Mm-hmm. And then a lot of that was also happening post Michael Floyd, and the enrollment at HBCUs has been going up. And so these institutions, as well as some of these coaches or potential coaches, are just looking for, where can I go? Also, I kind of equate, interestingly enough, because I was in academia for a short period, and I equated getting an academic job with a coaching job, because you have an area of expertise, you've gotten training in that, and then you have to wait for the opening. But there's only so many spots. And so I think as we have more and more players in the NFL retire, think about coaching, think about broadcasting, there's only so many spots and so many places you can go. And so I think this HBCU route from that perspective is a good one. In terms of what Coach Prime was able to do at JSU, just from a general standpoint, right? Like, you got to get people in the seats, because that's where the money comes from at the end of the day. And that's PWI, HBCU, tribal colleges, whatever may have you. And so I think in that regard, accomplish that. I think bringing attention to the program, obviously his unique personality. I wasn't watching football like that when he was around, and prime time and all of that, but that also obviously added to that program. And then, he went to Colorado for the check or whatever.
Did you find yourself, because again, you looked at it from a different perspective, but could you see when Colorado came calling, like, yeah, this is okay, or were you kind of like, nah, I wish he would have stayed? Were you, because it's like two separate.
I think, and again, I think about this the way I think about how I analyze presidential administrations. I'm a political scientist, so I always bring back to the politics. It's, you could have a feeling about something, but you don't have all the information. So I definitely was disappointed when he left, because I thought you were just getting started and you could have stayed for another season or two. I mean, just look at JSU was in the HBCU bowl game, and you can't sit there and say that that wasn't some of the remnants of what Coach Prime was able to bring. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, right, like, you got to get your money. Colorado was a big program. I'm sure they did their song and dance, and they were also trying to improve their program and bring themselves back to relevancy. So I wasn't in the room when he had the negotiations or when he talked to his family. I think too he was probably thinking about his sons. And while HBCU programs have been making some strides in terms of their football programs, they're not exactly an open door to the NFL. So I think if maybe his sons weren't part of that picture, maybe he would have more likely stayed. I think, again, just thinking back, I'm sure his sons were part of the reason why he made the moves that he did.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think that even when he was there, his son Shador, who's the quarterback, was doing some great things at the HBCU, and then he was like trying to scream from that podium of the HBCU, like, oh, he should be a Heisman candidate, or he should be up there with the numbers he's putting up. And it took him to go to Colorado for people to believe that, now he's arguably the first or second pick in the draft. Right. But Coach Prime was saying that from the podium that he was at, and then just it was like noise falling on deaf ears. It just wasn't heard or taken seriously. But I'll say ESPN and did its due diligence in covering JSU, but then everybody would say, well, he's getting all the players. Look at the level of competition he's playing against. Those other teams are at a disadvantage because now he's getting players that are equivalent to a group of 5 school playing against some HBCUs who don't have as many playing. Not to say that there weren't good games and games that challenged them, but the overall just the resources aren't there to attract those type of players to other programs.
Right.
And you could see it. The maturation. Year 1, it was like he was on even ground. Year 2, he took 3 steps forward, and then year 3 at Jackson State, he probably took like 10 steps forward. And if he would have stayed there 4 or 5 years, he probably would have had something that was equivalent to, I don't want to say like a Power 5 program, but I would definitely say a North Dakota State, like that type of talent, somewhat, because because the scholarships would be comparable and stuff like that. But it is what it is. He brought a light to Jackson State. The one thing I was worried about, have you ever heard the term white elephant? So it's like when the Olympics come and then all the hoopla is happening, and then the Olympics leaves and those places become distraught, like basically a nothing. And if you go around like the world, they're like empty stadiums. People were like, the grass is unkept and all this, but like they'll show you something from 1990 where that place was pristine, and you're like, wait, what happened? It's like, oh, the Olympics left. So I'm glad to see. I thought it was a great step forward, like you said, that Jackson State not only was in the Celebration Bowl but won the Celebration Bowl this past season, to show that it was bigger than Coach Prime, and the residue of his presence being there was very important. That being said, like I said, there's some sentiment out there that Michael Vick is just using this as a stepping stone, that DeSean Jackson is just using this as a stepping stone. I've even had somebody message me like, I want Michael Vick to do good at Norfolk State, just so that in maybe 3 or 4 years, once he has all his ducks in a row, he can go take over at Virginia Tech. And I was like, wow, you know what I mean? That's projecting forward. But that's what a lot of people look at it as.
But let's be real here. Like, these are jobs.
Okay.
Every job is a stepping stone.
Right.
Right? I mean, just thinking about this podcast and preparing, I thought about Andy Reid and his coaching tree. I even thought about Bill Belichick, right, and his coaching tree. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't sit there and say either the two. Like, Bill Belichick used to play for the Giants. You think he's going to sit there on the sidelines as a coordinator forever? Right? Like, so let's be real. All of these are stepping stones. So at some point, they are going to leave these institutions. They're going to go somewhere else. So, like, facts straight. But the other piece, too, is that are we going to give these men a chance to build programs? Because the other issue that I have with the NFL is you don't give these coaches enough of a chance to turn things around. So we have to give these men grace, but also realize that, no, they're not going to be here for 10, 15 years. But how many people now are in jobs for 10, 15 years? Like, those days are gone. So, like, I think the downside to how Coach Prime left Colorado, right? Like, it's not the fact, to me, it's not the fact that he left, it's the fact how you left. So I do hope that when DeSean Jackson, when Michael Vick decide to make their next moves, that they do so in a way, right, that gives them grace and good, light for that next position. But don't sit here and think that Mike Vick's going to be here 5, 6, 7 years, or DeSean Jackson's going to be here 5, 10 years, right?
If they do good.
It's not how the job market works in anything, let alone sports.
Yeah.
But I think give them a good 3, 4, 5 years, right? Let them build the program, because year 1 is just cleaning house. Year 2 is really going to be their real first year. And then 3 and 4, right? Where do some of their players end up going? Do they end up in the NFL? Do they actually have decent seasons, right? And they don't have to be stars. NFL players have the shortest pro careers. Can you get a guy that can go in for 3 and 5 years and be a strong role player? Maybe you get a star or two. Great. But I think if they can do those things and set those programs up for that long-term success, I think they'll be all right.
Okay. So again, going back to your history, both of your parents are, you said Del State graduates.
Yes, indeed. Go Hornets.
What do you think the impact of DeSean Jackson really would do, just knowing that program a little, not knowing, but knowing that school, and then just like I said, having some vibes around HBCUs.
Right. I mean, I think this move is just going to help with what Delaware State University has already done. The last 2 years, their annual scholarship ball, this year they raised $4 million. Last year they raised $3 million. They had Magic Johnson last year at their scholarship ball. They bought a predominantly white institution, the first HBCU to acquire a university. That was a predominantly white institution. So I think bringing in DeSean Jackson and really drawing new attention to their athletics, because the basketball team's actually been doing decent. They've made it to the NCAA tournament a few times in the last 10 years. So I think, but at the end of the day, we know sadly that football is marquee, whether it's NFL ratings versus NBA ratings. NCAA, football's bringing in the money. So I think if they can bring in a DeSean Jackson, have him bring the program to another level, and that's just adding to your dollars. That's adding to the longevity of your institution. And in a conversation I had earlier today, somebody reminded me, again, my politics hat, right? If you're looking at some of the things that this next administration wants to do, right? Joe Biden put a lot of money into HBCUs, that HBCU initiative that they have down at the White House. And a lot of that money is probably going to disappear. And so moves like this can help universities like DSU, like Norfolk State University, thrive for these next 4 years. And hopefully, again, looking beyond kind of the politics of it all, can you build these programs, take them to the next level?
What do you think the type of resources, you've seen DeSean Jackson over the years? You're an Eagles fan, unfortunately.
Fly.
Anyways, you're an Eagles fan, unfortunately. I'll let you live that. But you've seen him as a player. You've seen him, I'm sure from the year he got drafted to the year he left, and so on and so forth. So, what do you like about DeSean Jackson? What is it? What are some things that you think his characters? As somebody who's a fan.
I think DeSean Jackson was an explosive player, a playmaker. And again, just reflecting on coming here tonight, like miracle at the Meadowlands too. And on my last campaign, interestingly enough, we were doing some things around Wikipedia, and I actually edited the page for the NFC East because someone erroneously said that all the teams played in the suburbs, but Philadelphia plays in Southern Philly. So they're actually in the city. So I had to correct that error. But anyway, I was looking up the Miracle at the Meadowlands, and as an Eagles fan, I always called it Miracle at the Meadowlands, too, and whatnot. But when I went back to the page, I guess the Giants fans have a different name for it because it's not such a joyous occasion. But I think, too, in terms of just his arc as a player, his development as a player, and probably as a person as well, I think what he's going to be able to instill into those young men, right? Because when he was in that prime time of his career, he was kind of known as a goofball. I still remember the first couple times I saw that play, the Miracle at the Meadowlands. I'm like, oh, he's showing off because he's at the yard line and he needs to go over and get the touchdown. But years later, realizing that actually was a smart move because he wanted to make sure that the time ran out, right, based on NFL rules. So I think those lessons that he's going to be able to give to those young men, as well as guidance as some of these players get into the draft, what he's going to be able to tell them, those experiences, I think, are different from other coaches that maybe just played college ball and didn't quite make it to the NFL. And then just a little bit that I remember about his background growing up in California in the hood, in his statement about joining this program, he kind of highlighted that as much as it's about the coaching, right, he also wants to develop these young men. And I think just looking at some of these sadder stories in the NFL, not necessarily on the field, but off the field, I think it's important for folks like DeSean and even Michael Vick to be in these positions and coach these men and, give them, pearls of wisdom from the other side in a way that I think other coaches wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good. And even to add on to that, I think one thing that when you look at DeSean Jackson, Michael Vick, Coach Prime, the one thing that they have working for them, where if it was just some random run-of-the-mill player who just retired and maybe wasn't, not to say wasn't as an impactful, but they were already working in their second careers. So, I forgot that Michael Vick was on. I forgot what NFL show he was on.
NFL on Fox, I think.
Yeah, NFL on Fox. But I did know that DeSean Jackson, he had been on I Am Athlete. He had a podcast with Shady McCoy. He was working on FS1 as well. Part time. Spot duty. He was the one who broke the story about Devontae Adams leaving the Raiders, and then Devontae denied. Then a couple weeks later, he did leave the Raiders in the same way, in the same fashion. And it was kind of crazy because it was like, I don't even know DeSean Jackson to save my life. I've had one conversation with him, but DeSean Jackson was exactly right. And he talked about DeSean, I believe he said I don't even remember if he said it. He said it wasn't that he spoke to Devontae. It was the fact that he could read his demeanor and could tell what was going through his mind. And then it came true, and then it's like, okay, so he's in tune with the game enough to know what's going on, what players could be thinking, should be thinking, so on and so forth. And I will say that the only thing that I'd say differs from, Coach Prime being hired is that he wasn't doing – well, he was, but it was just short-lived. Because we did find out that he was coaching a little bit, but it just had been short-term because he just retired 2 years ago, whereas Coach Prime, he had been coaching his kids from little league on up through high school, and then just tapping out last Saturday, ungracefully, to BYU, but all the way through college, which most people don't get to do. Another, I think, fun fact is about DeSean Jackson, because I think that term, the one where he said it was always his dream to coach at a HBCU. He does have East Coast ties. His dad was from the East Coast. And the only reason I know this is because I watched the documentary a few years ago. I guess they were showing his life, how he how he got to Cal. I think it was his older brother or something used to film all his stuff. And then he went to Cal Poly. He was going to go to USC, but then something happened with USC, so then he ended up deciding to go to Cal. I think he played. I'm not sure if he played with Aaron Rodgers or not. It may have been around the same time, or maybe they did a short stint together on the field and stuff like that. And so, he was like that. He was a really, really good player. And that's I'm going down a rabbit hole, but I think that's the difference in some of these hires that people are missing out on. It's just not the run of the mill, just NFL player who got in and got out. These are players who are like one of one. Like, there's not too many DeSean Jacksons running around. There's not too many. There will never be another Michael Vick. I just don't think. Lamar Jackson is Lamar. Like, you can't. Lamar Jackson and Michael Vick are two separate players. They just play the same style of football, but there'll never be a Michael Vick. Like, there was a Michael Vick experience in Atlanta. Were you at school when Michael Vick was?
I think so, but
yeah,
I wasn't
paying attention.
So.
Yeah, but the Michael Vick experience, there'll never be another Deion Sanders. So these are like one of ones type guys. And, somebody came at me the other day. It was like, oh, well, when was DeSean Jackson ever a legend? And I was like, I had to actually go research his stats. Like, look at this guy's stats. Like, yeah.
Oh, goodness.
I was like, he may not have been like the best receiver ever, but his stats was crazy. He could have even if he didn't reach 1,000 yards every year, he probably could have.
I mean, two things. In terms of California, I can at least say for Spellman and Morehouse, there's a strong HBCU connection because I had a lot of friends from California when I was at school. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure those seeds were planted around where DeSean Jackson was, or the possibility is high. And then in terms of DeSean Jackson, anyway, maybe this is my Eagles hat coming on, but let's not forget that he went from the Philadelphia Eagles down to Washington, and they didn't have the name they had now. And we all know how many players Washington ruined. Maybe not as bad as the New York Jets recently, but they ruined Donovan McNabb. They jacked up DeSean Jackson, right? So to sit there and like part of the reason why he's not as, I guess, known, or like whatever this commenter on the internet was probably saying, is not on DeSean Jackson. It's on the Washington Commanders.
Cool.
And that whole, anyway.
No, that's fair.
Shout out to my friends who are Commanders fans. Y'all had a great season this year.
That's fair. That's fair to say. But I mean, even though you saying that, like, you don't think he heard about Howard when he was down there, you know?
Yeah. Or even too, like him being in the Philadelphia area.
Yeah.
Right. You're talking about Temple. Temple's not an HBCU, but a lot of Black people in that area go to Temple University.
Right.
Delaware State is going to get in the conversation regionally, right? Because he was, you know, Philadelphia. When you're a football player, you're not just on the field. You're doing all that outreach in the community. So they're outreaching down to Delaware, right?
And DeSean Jackson was outside. He wasn't the buttoned up, let me go home type.
No, not at all.
No.
So,
But he's learned from that. And you could actually just like see his maturity throughout his years, and just, you know, the way he talks about certain things and just the way he moves and stuff like that. You definitely could see a lot of maturity in him. Why do you think a kid coming out, African American kid out of high school, should choose a HBCU?
So I tell people the story that my dad told me. We already went over. My dad went to Delaware State University, and when I was picking schools, he said to me, Danielle, go to any college that you want. Your mother and I, we will support you. We will get you to that college. But he said, what I'm going to tell you is, when we go down to homecoming and we bring our friends from these PWIs, they say, I can't go home like this, or I don't go back to my school and it's not like home like this. And so between that story from my dad and some of the experiences I had as a kid, I was a Jack and Jill kid, 50 years next year for Newcastle County Jack and Jill chapter. Also, there's this program in Delaware, it's kind of like Upward Bound, but very Delaware-esque, the FAME program. And so when I was reflecting, getting ready to go to college, and I thought about my experience, right? While Delaware is the 8th Blackest state, when I got to the classes I took in high school, like, I would see the Black people in the hallway, but not necessarily in my classroom. And so when I thought about the college experience I wanted to have and the places where I felt most comfortable, it was in those places where I was around people that looked like me, right? And that comfort, those days in FAME, comfort in Jack and Jill, which I didn't always appreciate when I was in it, but later kind of saw that. And the other piece about going to an HBCU is everybody thinks, oh, it's this Black university, and like you're around all these Black people. I received so many diverse experiences and views of Black people being at an HBCU, right? Light skin, dark skin, thick, skinny, this, that, and the third. People from all over the country, all over the world. And I got to see that. I got to see that diversity is more than race, especially being in the United States, where that's kind of the marker. And so you can always be a small percentage, but you only have a couple of times where you can be in a room with people who look like you, possibly think like you. I still remember sitting in class, and Spellman's an all-women's college, and so you're in this room with women and you're having these conversations, you're having these debates. And it wasn't until I got to graduate school at Rutgers that I realized just the amount of
culture
confidence.
shock.
It's not even a culture shock, but like, I would have debates in grad school, and I don't think it was until my second year in grad school when I realized that some of the reason why I got kind of some of the looks that I got, or even the reactions that I got, is because I was a Black woman. But I wasn't thinking like that. I was just making the arguments and the points because we're in class, we're making these debates. And then I sat and thought, oh shoot, like, I'm doing this because for 4 years I was in a room with a bunch of Black women. Mm-hmm. And so being able to peel away kind of some of these diversity markers and not necessarily having to rest in that or the stereotypes around that, and like, I could just think and be seen and like talk without all of that baggage, really shaped who I was as a person and the confidence that I had in graduate school, and even to this day. Mm-hmm. So for me, for that reason, definitely go to an HBCU. The other part is, I tell people all the time that there's kind of two perspectives on college. And my brother, one of my brothers, have three, has one. Like, you go, you get your piece of paper, the cheapest way or the easiest, not necessarily easiest, but like facilitate getting that paper, go get your job. I'm more of the, you got to buy into a network. And so to me, going to a HBCU, that network has value. So yeah, you're paying more for that education, but like I've got people that I went to school with or partied with that are mayors of major towns in the United States, that are, you know, top doctors and lawyers, and like somebody I went to college with, like sitting on judgeships in Atlanta, and I'm forgetting all these states, but shout out to the class of 2005, Limelight, 20 years, right? So like these are the things that an HBCU can give you that unfortunately, well, I can't, you know, no sweeping generalizations, but you're less likely to get at a PWI.
Well, point taken. What is your vision, or what do you hope to see from DeSean Jackson at Delaware State?
I just hope it's another strong feather in the hat for that institution, for the state of Delaware. Dr. Tony Allen, you know, what he's been able to do in his tenure to take things to another level.
That's the president?
State. That's the president of Delaware State
Okay.
University. You know, the amounts of money that he's been able to raise, taking advantage of President Biden being in the White House, his position as president of Delaware State University has just been phenomenal. And I think this is just another feather in the cap for that institution. And I think too, just again, talking about HBCUs, like everybody talks about Spellman, they talk about Howard, they talk about Hampton, Morehouse, but there's lots of HBCUs, and they all bring the things that I was just talking about in terms of strong network, people that are looking out for you, that are going to give you experiences that you can't get anywhere else. And so I think, and then looking at school, like college is expensive. I'm still paying for my Spellman education. And so I think a place like Delaware State University that maybe doesn't have that high ticket price, right, is an option for somebody to get a quality education, to get that HBCU experience. And so I think with this program coming, or with DeSean Jackson taking this program to another level, I think it will allow the university to get funds to continue its vision, to continue to support more students. I'm hoping more scholarships, better attention to some of the other sports. I already talked about how the men's program has, you know, made a couple of appearances in the NCAA tournament. The bowling team, I think, was crushing records, or, you know, making some noise down at Delaware State. I think, too, they've taken advantage of the merger with the other small university down there. And so additional sports that you wouldn't necessarily think about, right, are getting attention. And so I really hope that it goes beyond the football, it goes beyond the sports, and just allows more young people to get their education and not pay as much for it.
That's what's up. So you had a fun fact before we close out about Jimmy Carter, you know. So I figured we might as well share it.
I mean, I'm not sure if it's a fun fact, but with all just the news about the passing of the 39th president, I found out that that he actually was a president that kind of put together this kind of organization or organism within the White House to give funding to HBCUs, drawing attention to the need to put funding into those colleges and universities. And so I thought that was pretty neat to see. Also added a lot of female and black judges. For one post I saw, it was like 10 female judges before he became president, and then he more than doubled that number as Biden sets the record as well.
That's what it is. Anything that you're working on, anything that's important to you, you know, before you give all your last, sentiments and all that good stuff?
I guess I'll say one last sentiment on this topic, and then I'll talk a little bit about myself. As, I guess, people outside of Norfolk, Virginia, or Virginia area, people outside of area come and look at these institutions and these new hires in this process. Just shout out to some of the people that have been covering these programs. I reached out to my friend Chris Stevens just to hear his thoughts on this. And so he's one of the guys in Delaware that looks at Delaware State and a lot of HBCU sports. So let's make sure that we look at those articles too, and not just these ESPN, these big name sports, because these guys have been covering it on these 2 and whatever season, these 4 and whatever seasons. And they're the folks that have the knowledge that we're going to really need to analyze the success for both DeSean Jackson and Michael Vick. As far as me, I am a political scientist. I'm a politico. I worked on a campaign in 2024, looking for a 2025 campaign, hoping to get good people into political office and raise them a lot of money so that we can get the money out of politics, interestingly enough. Love women in politics. You can find me at Natha Politico, Natha, on most social media platforms.
There it is. There it was. Danielle Scott was in the building. If you wanna holler at her, if you have any questions, in regards to politics, 2025 is looking to be a year, only one day away, and all that good stuff. Well, this is probably premiering, I don't know, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, whatever. You can reach out to her, and I'm sure she can answer some questions for you, and just to look forward what's next, in that political landscape. But
Fly Eagles fly.
I'll let you get this one time. Go ahead.
Fly Eagles fly, NFC East champs, and let's see if we can take it a little further down the road. Thank you, Giants. Thank you, Giants. We appreciate the gift.
DC, disgusting. Whatever. My Cowboys at home on the couch.
With the rest of us.
With the rest of us, right. But that's what it is. And y'all, like I said, y'all know where to find her. Y'all know where to find me. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment below what you thought about this episode, anything she had to say, anything I had to say, whatever. I'm here for it. And looking forward to that. And so with that being said, this is Boom More Sports, House of Boom, podcast, all that good stuff. I'm your host, Eric Boom Salvery, and we are out. Peace.